Morning glory and evening grace, and happy St. Patrick's Day to you all, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in Relief Factor Studio East inside the Beltway. It's cold, and boy, did we had wind last night that I actually kind of almost thought may have to go to the basement. Didn't quite sound like a train. That's what we were trained in Ohio all those years. If it sounds like a train, go to the basement. Wasn't quite like a train, but there are trees down all over the place. Nobody that I know is injured, so that's good news. A lot of people got injured, bad guys in Iran. Actually, they got killed yesterday. I'm reading from Iran International English right now. The Israeli airstrike that killed Iran's top security official, Ali Larijani, also killed his deputy at the Supreme National Security Council, Ali Bateri, as well as Larijani's son, who served as his special assistant, informed sources told Iran International. Qasem Qureshi, deputy head of the besieged paramilitary organization, was also killed in the Israeli strike on the besieged meeting, the sources said. The meeting was held to discuss how to confront potential protests during the Persian festival of Fireworks Wednesday, which is now underway in Iran. Well, not many people putting up their hand to replace Larijani, I think. They've got to have someone, and I said it on Fox News 2 hours ago, and I'll say it to you right now. There was a period of time in the 80s, when I was in the Reagan administration, when the Soviet leader would keep dying. Brezhnev died. Then Andropov died. Then Chernenko died. Then we got Gorbachev. So maybe eventually we will get someone with whom President Trump can deal, but not yet. Let's go to the tape. President Trump had I'm not sure if he's the president. I think he's Ireland's president. Prime Minister Michael Martin in the Oval for a gaggle today. Cut number 5.
We're not ready to leave yet, but we'll be leaving in the near future. We'll be leaving in pretty much the very near future. But right now they've been decimated from every standpoint. And again, we've had great support from countries in the Middle East, great support. But we've had essentially no support from NATO.
And that's a very bad thing. Lindsey Graham joined me today in casting an eye at NATO and saying, what have we been defending you for all these years? And maybe this is the moment that the pivot really begins. Europe, you're on your own. Take care of yourself. You're no good to the world. You're no good to anybody. Help the Ukrainians. We've got to take care of the Pacific where the China threat is. Because the EU is completely nuts, and we're not getting any ships from anyone, not even a symbolic minesweeper from our special relationship ally, Great Britain. What a shame. Michael Martin, by the way, I want to jump down this. There's a bust of Winston Churchill in the Oval. Now, I don't expect Donald Trump to really know that the Irish hate Winston Churchill, but cut number 12.
You see that man right there? You know who that is?
Churchill.
Winston Churchill. The late, great Winston Churchill. And Barack Hussein Obama did not want his bust in this office. Did you know that? And Barack Hussein Obama sent that bust back to England. They didn't want it. And when I came in, I was asked if I wanted it. I said, absolutely, I want it. And I put it right there, Winston Churchill. And, unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
Keir is not, ouch, he's not even close to Winston Churchill. Back to the joint gaggle. The president is asked about how much Iran means to him. Cut number 6.
Iran is just a military operation to me. Iran is something that was essentially largely over in 2 or 3 days because the Navy was wiped out almost immediately. The Air Force came next. The anti-aircraft came next. I mean, we're flying over Iran. We could take out their electric capacity in 1 hour. We have there's nothing they can do right now because everything is knocked out. They have no radar, no anti-aircraft. They have nothing. And we don't, and it was a decision I made. We discussed it, Pete, Marco, JD, all of us, Chris, we discussed it. We can knock out their electricity in a matter of minutes if we wanted to. There's nothing they can do about it. We can knock out their oil in Cargill, and the only thing we didn't take down was their oil, because if we knock out, I call them the pipes, very complex. But if you do that, it'll take them forever to rebuild, meaning whoever, and hopefully it's a sane group of people, but whoever it is that's going to be running that, and we're going to try to get people that are going to run it well, and it's going to be a prosperous, wonderful place. It used to be, if you go back, it used to be the people are great, the people are smart and energetic, and it used to be very successful. Now it's a country run by fear. It's a country where they tell protesters, don't go outside, because if you do, we're going to kill you.
He's right about that. It used to be a very prospering country. It was progressing well under the Shah until he was deposed in 1979. Now I want to talk about a resignation that happened today. Joe Kent. I don't know Congressman Kent. He was a congressman for 2 terms. He was a libertarian who became a Democrat, who became a congressman, a Republican congressman from Washington State, lost his seat. He became the director of the Counterterrorism Center, and he's a war hero. He has 6 Bronze Stars. So he's a war hero. He's a Gold Star husband. He lost his wife in the Long War. So the man is sacrificed for the country. I'm not going to make fun of him, but he quit with a really unusual letter blaming the war on Israel, which is just not right. And the president got asked about Joe Kent today, cut number 7.
Well, I read his statement. I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it. And many of the greatest military scholars are saying for years that president should have taken out Iran because they wanted a nuclear weapon. They were, if we didn't do the attack, or if I'll go a step further, if I didn't terminate the Iran nuclear deal given to us, one of the worst deals ever made by Barack Hussein Obama. Remember when they sent Boeing 757s over there, loaded with cash, hundreds of millions of dollars? You would have been very happy. This was a wonderful. They said hundreds of millions. People forget that. Does anybody remember? Right? You remember. Hundreds of millions of dollars in a Boeing 757. I think they had 2 of them loaded. They took the seats out and they put cash. And it was so much that there wasn't a bank in Virginia, Maryland, or D.C. that had any money left. They stripped them of all their money, put it into place, sent it to Iran, almost as ransom. That's not going to happen with Trump. And nobody ever did anything about it. Nobody ever said anything about it. Can you imagine if I did that? So they've been a threat for a long time. But they've really been a threat. If I didn't terminate Obama's horrible deal that he made, the Iran nuclear deal, you would have had a nuclear war 4 years ago. You would have had nuclear holocaust, and you would have had it again if we didn't bomb the site. So when somebody is working with us that says they didn't think Iran was a threat, we don't want those people, because, and there are some people, I guess I would say that, but they're not smart people or they're not savvy people. Iran was a tremendous threat. And virtually every NATO nation, and this is the thing, if they told me it wasn't a threat, and therefore they don't want to help, but when they say it was a threat, and it was a major threat, every one of them, I think every one of them, I don't know of one that said they're not a threat, but when they say it was a threat, but we're not going to help, I think they're very foolish.
Very, very. In fact, let's get one more clip from the president on NATO. Underscore that, cut number 8.
NATO for not supporting you on this. Any repercussions?
Well, no, I just think that it's not good for a partnership when they say what you're doing is a great thing, but we're not going to help. You know, they say what you did is a great thing, but we're not going to help.
Well, you know, I've always been a big fan of NATO and believed in getting NATO to move up to 5%, and we needed NATO, and NATO got us through the Cold War, and Thatcher stood aside Reagan when we had to put alongside Reagan. We had to put the Pershings and the cruise missiles into Europe in the face of the nuclear freeze movement. And eventually the wall came down and New Europe, Rummy talked about New Europe versus Old Europe, and New Europe is really where it's at. Poland doesn't have a lot of ships, though. And Finland needs them. Sweden needs them because the Russians are right there. It ought to be Great Britain and France sending us ships, and they're not. So it makes you wonder, really, NATO? Not too sure about it. Josh Holmes joins us from the Ruthless podcast on this St. Patrick's Day. He's not wearing green. That's dangerous to begin with, Mr. Holmes. I hope you were wearing green this morning when you taped the Ruthless podcast, were you?
Hewitt, I neglected my green. It was a huge oversight. And, I mean, there's a lot going on here. I completely forgot.
All right. Well, we'll give you a pass if you will tell me from the perspective of a Minnesota kid who probably grew up on skates, how great was the gold? I mean,
10 of 10.
where did you watch it, and with whom did you watch it, and how great was it?
My 8 and 5-year-old boys who like hockey were Caps fans here in D.C., but they didn't grow up in Minnesota like I did. When you grow up in Minnesota, it is like Herb Brooks is a deity, and hockey is a church within Minnesota, and we've all sort of put the 1980 Olympic team on a pedestal in which every other life event is measured, and that's the top rung. You could never get to it. And for the first time in 40 years, 6 years, all of a sudden I got to watch an 8 and a 5-year-old go absolutely bananas, not just for the gold medal game, but all of the games. I mean, they were going nuts. I loved every second. It was like reliving a youth and a culture that I grew up with. God, it was fantastic.
Oh, that is a wonderful story, and I'm glad that you got to watch it with your boys. I watched a lot of Browns losses with my boys. It's not the same thing. So I'm very glad. I'm very glad you got to go to the mountaintop with your boys. Now I've got a generational question for you. The leading intellect of your generation, Ben Rhodes, the Metternich of MS Now, the man who invented the echo chamber, of which you were probably a part. Mr. Rhodes posted 18 hours ago, after Donald Trump said he could take Cuba anytime he wanted. Ben Rhodes posted, "This is dangerous, immoral, and illegal. The third government he tried to overthrow in the first 3 months of this year. We are in the worst case scenario of authoritarianism." What do you think about that, Josh Holmes? Worst case.
You know what, Hugh? Are you aware of what Ben Rhodes' nickname was in the Obama White House?
Was it Hamas?
It was Hamas. It was Hamas.
Yes.
Do you know how dedicated to the cause you would need to be in Obama White House to earn the nickname Hamas? I mean, you
so dedicated that you would be part of the official delegation to Fidel Castro's funeral, which Ben Rhodes was.
He was.
Yes, he was. And he's written 2 absolutely unread books. I don't know what their book scan numbers were, but they're not going to be in triple digits. They're going to be in double digits. His family can't be that big. And he's never not wrong. And I just wonder, how did we lose to Obama? How did we lose to him in 2012? 2008, circumstances beyond anyone's control, the economic panic. But how did we lose?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Barack Obama was an extraordinary campaigner. I think we never got to the point where we actually discussed policy. I think we were, as a nation, I'm not talking about you or me or anybody who's followed these things closely, but I think as a nation, everybody was sort of captivated by the idea of Barack Obama, which, superseded in a lot of ways all of the specifics that administration was up to. And Ben Rhodes is a perfect example. And this is a guy and an administration that pursued policies that were, the reason, basically, that we are doing what we're doing in Iran right now. I mean, they perpetuated the growth and capabilities of America's greatest enemies. I mean, look, you have to be so ahistorical and just not understand the basics of how the Middle East has gotten to be where it is. Hezbollah, Hamas, You're talking about all of the terrorist activities. When we were in Iraq, the number one lead sponsor of terrorism wasn't Iraq itself, it was Iran. We've dealt with Iran since 1979, and it has been no secret to anybody who's been even a newspaper level of understanding about what it is that they're up to and what they intend to do to the United States and the Western world. This is not a choice. At some level, it's just a choice of whether or not you pass the problem on to the next president or not. And these guys all pretend as though, they were just minding their business over there, the Ayatollah and everybody else. What's a roadside bomb between friends?
I am looking forward to Ruthless Goes to War. I have saved your podcast from today for tomorrow's Trundle because it's Ruthless Goes to War. I want to hear how Ruthless goes to war. But I want to know about a political question, and I hope you talk about it with the fellas. The Republicans running for Senate especially, whether it's John Huston in Ohio or Susan Collins in Maine, or you look all over, even Mike Whatley in North Carolina, or Mike Rogers in Michigan, which is an open seat, should they put their arms around this war and say, we are freeing people, and we did it in Venezuela, and we did it in Cuba, and we're doing it in Iran. We are a freedom party. We support this. Or should they hang back, Josh Holmes?
The moment that you stop having an intellectually honest conversation with the American people is the moment that you cease to be a serious political party. So I do think that they should. I don't want to mislead your listeners. We talk a lot about the Gayatollah, which is the lead of Ruthless today. So they're going to have a little bit more fun than
Ruthless goes to war. Ruthless goes
nuts and bolts. But just to your point very, very quickly. Look, Republicans have to get on the same page, not just ideologically in terms of what the president is doing with Iran, but the fact of the matter is the Democratic Party, for the first time in my memory, has been willing to sacrifice the health and well-being of every single American for an ideological opposition to Donald Trump at all costs. The Department of Homeland Security not being funded is the only thing that anyone should be talking about. You're going to war with the most notorious state sponsor of terrorism and proxy wars in the entire world, and yet you are perfectly comfortable making sure that the United States of America doesn't have a Department of Homeland Security. It's insane. They've got to talk about this kind of thing, which is the tie that binds, the insanity of the Democratic Party in this particular time.
I love that. I actually think that's the winner. Because they have lost their marbles. And you've been around a long time, not as long as me, but in your long time, have they ever been this nutty before?
Never. It's not even conceivable, Hugh. 20 years ago, it would have been inconceivable that any Democratic leader would have ever led their conference into a situation where they're willing to risk the terrorist attacks in America, the health and well-being of their citizens for a partisan opposition in Washington, D.C. It would have been political suicide. Now it is their lifeblood, and you can see it in Mamdani. You can see it in the rise of the progressive left. This is the reason that Chuck Schumer's way of being is in the United States Senate, and Republicans got to focus on it before. And it's not just politics that they have to focus on. You have to focus on it because we really do need to protect the American people.
Amen to that. Josh Holmes, happy St. Patrick's Day, and we will be listening to Ruthless Goes to War in the Gayatollah. That's very funny, by the way. Tomorrow and Wednesday and on Friday, 3 times a week. Maybe wartime Ruthless needs to go to 4 times a week. Just saying, might need extra episodes of Ruthless. Thank you, Josh Holmes. Follow him at Josh Holmes. Follow Ruthless Podcast on X at Ruthless Podcast. Remember when NATO was in an alliance with America? And the European Union, we rebuilt Europe after we saved it. Remember that? Probably not unless you're over 80. But Donald Trump had a joint presser with Michael Martin, Prime Minister of Ireland, today, and they talked about the EU-NATO unwillingness to help us in the Strait of Hormuz, cut number 13.
Of how to try and bring about peace. And I think I've listened to you in terms of, you're correct. I mean, our hearts go to the Iranian people who have been repressed and suppressed for so many years, culminating in that savage murder of thousands and thousands of Iranians some months ago. No one was in a position to do anything about that. I think, and likewise with Ukraine, I mean, the Russians did invade Ukraine. have taxed civilian infrastructure and so on like that. And for the people of Ukraine who just want peace and an opportunity to live, I think we have to continue to work to see, can we bring peace, different regime to Iran, where Iranians can live in peace again, and the people in the Middle East can live in peace. And you're doing your bit there in terms of the work in Gaza and so on like that. And I think that's what we want, is a peaceful resolution of conflict. That's where we come from as a small nation. Right. We've been peacekeepers all our lives. And we're the longest serving nation in terms of provision of peacekeeping forces in the world, as it turns out. But we think ultimately all conflicts come to an end, and I think we have to try and work towards that end. And I'm sure European leaders and the US administration will engage, and hopefully we can get a landing zone somewhere.
I mean, the only thing, and I agree with everything you said, but we helped with Ukraine.
Yes.
And they don't help with Iran. And they all acknowledge that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. You yourself say it. You know, these are horrendous people. These are the worst people. And going back to Hitler, right? Going back to Hitler, these are the worst people. That's a long time ago. And there's been nothing close. Every problem, so many deaths. 90% of the people that got blown up by landmines, they loved them. You know, Soleimani, we killed him. If we didn't, it might be a different story, because he was a horrible person, but he was a very powerful person and leader, smart. But we killed him. If we didn't, I think you'd have it. I did. But I think it would have maybe a different situation. It wouldn't have been so easy as it has been, because it has been very easy. You know, it's all of their military is there, but you can always have somebody drop a mine in the water. It's like terrorism.
Yep.
And then you have the people that own the billion-dollar ship saying, well, let's not move that ship yet because we want. So we thought that Europe would help that, because they do have some minesweepers. But it's amazing that, you know, they all said, what a great job. They were calling me, congratulating us on the great job we did.
He's never going to forget this, and most Americans are never. They got minesweepers. We're not asking them to drop any bombs. Come sweep up the mines. No. Thank you, NATO. Lindsey Graham's mad at him. That's not a good thing. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. Got to take my Relief Factor. Got 5.5 in this morning. And it was cold. It was cold. But we had a new School of War from Aaron McLean. And I had a great commentary podcast on the Oscars from yesterday. Now I take my Relief Factor. And if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you can see there are the 4 pills. And a little bit of Waterloo Cherry Lemonade. I don't know what it is. It's sparkling water. Doesn't take much. Icarian curcumin and Veratron Omega. Those 4 natural supplements work with your body to get rid of inflammation. You got a natural anti-inflammatory system that keeps most of the aches and pains away. This is working even on this, even on my left arm, which is beginning to get better. And I'm sure it's tendonitis, and I'm sure it is in part because I tripled down on Relief Factor for 3 or 4 days. But still not where I'm going to be doing any lifting of weight. So I got to go further. Got to go further and farther and faster, and that's why Relief Factor makes sure I can do that. Try it. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, or go to their website, relieffactor.com. Speaking of websites, over at hughhewitt.com at the top, you'll see Give Living Water. That's for your tax-deductible contribution for Food for the Poor. Listen to Ed Rainey talk about what it goes to.
We work in 20 countries in the Caribbean and Latin America, and people who have no other resources except the incredible generosity of typically Americans who, you know, time and time again, you know, really just give from the bottom of their heart and through their love for their neighbor. And so this is a faith-based organization, and through our church networks in all these countries, we're able to get the aid to where it needs to be.
855-359-4673. 855-359-4673. Or go to HughHewitt.com. Find the Give Living Water banner at the top. It's blue. You cannot miss it. Or call 855-359-4673. You can also text Hewitt to 51555. David M. Drucker, senior political correspondent for The Dispatch. You should be reading The Dispatch every day. David, it is month 15 of Donald Trump's second term, and it is day 17 of the war with Iran. He has decapitated and changed the leadership in Venezuela. Cuba is teetering on the brink of being free for the first time in, 70 years. What do you think Republicans are going to run on when it comes to foreign policy in the fall?
Well, that's a really good question. You know, they keep trying to take the president's lead, and his explanation or plans can change from day to day. And the truth is, he doesn't really consult Congress all that much. And so I tend to think they're going to be focused on domestic issues. But, you know, as a matter of foreign policy, I think Venezuela will rank high up there just because of the level of execution. And at least for now, that looks to be a successful or at least a manageable aftermath. I think Iran, it's too early to tell. Clearly, they are for it. But if you're going to campaign on something, it all has to be, the aftermath has to be going well months down the road. And if the aftermath is going well months down the road, I am sure they're going to campaign on it. But it also depends on where they're campaigning, because the war still remains broadly unpopular if you're not a Republican voter. And if you're in a swing district or swing state, or even a state that leans a little bit to the left, it's not going to be useful for you to campaign on something that a majority of your voters are either skeptical of or opposed to.
Now, David Drucker, 13 Americans have paid the ultimate price in this war in 17 days. So there are 13 grieving families, 13 Gold Star families out there. There are also 13 families at Abbey Gate. And it seemed to me that one of the worst mistakes of the Biden administration was never to admit that those men and women died, or to grieve for them properly, or to appropriately recognize their families. Do you think the Trump administration is avoiding disrespect of the dead and making sure that every member of the administration is always aware that the cost is already extraordinary for America?
I mean, that's a good question. Look, I haven't followed closely every high-level administration official. I mean, certainly Secretary Hegseth, I think, has reacted properly. The president got a lot of criticism in some quarters for wearing a baseball cap to Dover when he was there, as he should have been, and is a good idea to receive the caskets of these dead American heroes. And so in some cases, given our polarized political climate, whether or not the administration is doing this is going to be in the eye of the beholder, depending on your point of view and what you think of Trump and the administration. Having said that, I haven't seen any major faux pas beyond, you know, possibly the baseball cap, again, depending on how you look at it.
Now, I also think a lot depends on our avoiding a catastrophic loss of life, meaning a lucky shot from the remaining missiles. And the Marines, I don't know whether they're going to Karg Island, if they're going to the coast of the Strait, or if they're going to go to Yemen. Goodness knows, the Houthis, we haven't heard much from the Houthis yet, and they could start screwing around with the Red Sea. The Marines are coming to do something, maybe just intimidate. How do you think the war has been conducted in the eyes, not of a partisan Trump hater, but of an objective independent? What do you think they're thinking right now?
Well, I don't know if there's such thing as an objective independent. I think that there is a really good case to make that this has been an extraordinarily successful military operation thus far. I think one of the reasons why some people, or many, you know, sort of rank and file voters, may have a hard time deciding whether this is a successful operation is because the explanation for why we're there seems to shift from day to day. And, you know, look, I mean, just as a political matter, I think the president could have done a better job preparing Americans for the possibility of war with Iran. And I think it would do him a world of good politically if he was just able to say once in a while, listen, we're at war. It's difficult. There may be some dark days, but here are our objectives, and here's why this is all worth it. His penchant for just saying, hey, listen, man, there's not much to worry about. This is easy. Everything's fine. It's I don't know if it's the real estate mogul in him or what. But I just think I think Americans understand that war is difficult and may not be great every single day, and that there are inherent risks. And as I've told you, Hugh, there's a great case to make that the risk of continuing with diplomacy after almost 50 years was more risky than going to war at this point, given everything we've experienced over the past couple of years and what we know. I just think the president likes to make everything sound like Venezuela, and this is not like Venezuela. And so I think, you know, depending on how he talks about this, will determine how, you know, that objective voter out there looks at it.
Now, last night he said, I can take Cuba whenever I want. And by that, I said on special report, I hope he takes them to freedom. But Ben Rhodes, of all people, nicknamed Hamas in the Obama White House, Ben Rhodes went on X to say, Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, this is what an authoritarian does in just this year. Authoritarians also do not tend to abide by decisions of the Supreme Court that they hate the decision and they're very angry about, but they abide by the decision because they are a president in a constitutional structure. So I think Ben Rhodes is nuts, but I think a lot of the Democratic Party has gone nuts on this, David. How can they not stand with the people of Iran right now?
Well, listen, I mean, I think it depends how you look at it. If you talk to a lot of Democrats, they will tell you that they think Iran is a horrible regime and that they wouldn't, shed any tears if the regime, was no more. But they take issue with the president declining to go to Congress for an authorization vote. And they think the administration's been too opaque in explaining its objectives and why now. And, I think there's a lot more nuanced Democratic thought than coming out of Ben Rhodes, who is reflexively against these sorts of things, no matter who does it and when they do it.
They look a lot like always against Trump all the time, no matter what the issue or the outcome. It's not a good look. Will they open? We got 45 seconds. Will they open DHS before we have a major terrorist incident here, David?
I couldn't tell you. It'll be interesting to see if there's more urgency on this front.
Should they feel more urgency?
Yeah, I think they should.
I agree with you. David M. Drucker on X, thank you. Great live shot outside. I don't know, it looks cold wherever you are, but thank you for joining us from outside, Mr. Drucker. It got very cold very quickly back in the Beltway. I came back on Saturday. It was a breezy 60. And then last night some front blew in and almost blew over all the houses, lots of trees, and it just got as cold as can be. But I got my 5.5 miles in. I did. Not gonna lie, got it done. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Marco Rubio was in the Oval Office with President Trump today when the questions turned to Cuba, cut number 17.
The embargo is codified. And but the bottom line is their economy doesn't work. It's a non-functional economy. It's an economy that has survived. That revolution, it's not even a revolution, that thing they have has survived on subsidies from the Soviet Union and now from Venezuela. They don't get subsidies anymore, so they're in a lot of trouble. And the people in charge, they don't know how to fix it. So they have to get new people in charge. That's what has to happen.
And the relationship we have with Venezuela has been, I think you could almost say, incredible.
Incredible, it is. It has been incredible. And I am looking forward to vacationing in Cuba. All they have to do is be a free country. Now, I talked to a senator today who was traveling, and I'm not going to tell you which one. And this senator had to go through the TSA line. And this senator had been patted down last week, called aside for a pat down. I said, well, you can't blame him. He said, no, you can't. So here's Mike Johnson on opening up the Department of Homeland Security and paying the TSA agents, cut number 22.
They're perfectly content jeopardizing the security of our homeland and hurting the American people if it means protecting criminal illegal aliens. And there is no other way to explain this. Democrats have made that conscious decision repeatedly. You know them by their actions. They're doing it again. In the fall, they shut down the government to try to give taxpayer-funded benefits to illegal aliens. And now they've shut down the government once again to reopen our borders and shield criminal aliens from our own laws. The American people are not on board with this. They're not going to have broken policies. They're not going to have us return to that. The broken policies of the Biden administration, they rejected that in the election soundly. The chaos that Democrats unleashed on the country, that was a big issue. In fact, it was the #1 issue in the election of 2024. We're not going back to that. The American people are not going to go back. The Republican conference is going to work every day to ensure that we don't. I'll leave you with this thought. We'll take a couple questions. Listen, CNN had a story this week. They were talking about the Quinnipiac's latest polling, which is consistent with other polls around the country, the favorability of Democrats in Congress. They are at their lowest number in history. In fact, they're far below the lowest polling numbers in history. And the story led with the lead, Democrats' favorability is lower than the Dead Sea.
Lower than the Dead Sea. That's below sea level. I want you to know something. the Department of Homeland Security includes a lot of counterterrorism, all of airport security, the Coast Guard. They're not getting paid because Democrats won't pay them. The appropriations bill was agreed to, part of a package of 12 bills that finally passed in regular order, and then Democrats decided to make this an issue, and they've shuttered it. So if you can't get somewhere, my daughter spent 8 hours in an airport yesterday, and it's because, of course, the Democrats. And so if you're having trouble traveling, you can thank the Democrats. There's a war on and a filibuster. The legendary Bigfoot of the Senate, the talking filibuster, is underway. It got going. A privilege motion to begin debate on the SAVE Act, which I would vote for, by the way. I would vote for the SAVE Act if they got ever to the end of this, is underway. Now, it's a privilege motion. Nothing else can be debated except the SAVE Act. And the GOP, with 53 senators, have to keep a quorum at all times in order to keep it going. Any amendment is allowed, so Democrats are going to figure out some amendments to bring up to try and embarrass the Republicans. And it could go on a long time. And Senator Lee has said he doesn't want to break the filibuster. He just wants to make the Democrats maintain a talking filibuster to stop the motion to proceed. I don't know what's going to happen here. SAVE Act is important. It's not as important as freeing the people of Venezuela and Cuba, freeing the people of Iran, making sure no more Americans die in this war. And the good news is we don't need any authority for the war. Everything's been appropriated for ICE. The only people who aren't going to get paid by the talking filibuster are the people in the Department of Homeland Security, which includes the TSA. They might not like the talking filibuster so much, but it's underway. I always bring you the news. I don't think it's going to work, but we'll see. Worth a try, I guess. Let's go back to Donald Trump today at the Congressional Friends of Ireland lunch, cut number 18.
Frankly, as somebody said, they could leave today and it would take 10 years to rebuild the damage that's been done. But I think we have to make it a little bit more permanent because no other president has to go through this, and we shouldn't have any other president having to go through this kind of a thing. And if they didn't want to do it, if for some reason they didn't want to do it, we'd have the same problem. We don't ever want to have that problem again, not with lunatics. We can't have lunatics controlling nuclear weaponry. So I just want to thank everybody.
Cut number 19, the president again talking to the Friends of Ireland caucus.
I went to Susie. I always go to Susie. I said, Susie, do you mind if I take a little excursion here? Do you mind if I, we're hitting all these records, right? More people are working in the United States today than ever before. I could name this. I don't want to bore you because this is all about Ireland. This is all about, but you're a big part of it because you're a big part of this country. But I said, do you mind if I take a little excursion, my chief of staff, because I want to do this. I have Marco here. We have a lot of our great people. JD is here. They're all here. And I say, let's do this. We got to do it right. Should have been done by many presidents. Should have been done long before 47 years. It's 40 years of living in terror. They're called the bully of the Middle East.
Not anymore. Cut number 21, one more cut from President Trump at the Friends of Ireland lunch.
The war is proceeding very, very strongly. We're doing very, very well. Iran, knocking the hell out of them, and you have to do that. We can't let them have a nuclear weapon. They were 2 weeks away, in my opinion, 2 weeks away from having a nuclear weapon. If those beautiful, magnificent machines, those B-2 bombers, if they didn't do their job 7 or 8 months ago, they would have had a nuclear weapon, and there would have been no talking to them, no talking at all. They would have used it very gladly, very happily, and you sort of see that by the fact that they were sending missiles, ballistic missiles, powerful missiles, to all of their neighbors, and for the most part, they were supposed to be somewhat friendly with their neighbors. They were going to blow the hell out of them, and that was going to be the Middle East, between Israel, the Middle East, and Europe would have been there, and we would have been there. There would have been no stopping, and we did a good job. And a lot of people appreciate it. A lot of presidents know they should have done it. It was 47 years of terror. Every time you see somebody with no legs, no arms,
a face that's been really so badly.
You know, I mixed my metaphors up last night talking about this on Brett Baer's special report panel. Let's play that cut number one.
But Hugh, they have a dominance now over the air superiority. They have control over the Iranian military for the large part. The missiles and drones have reduced dramatically over recent days. They're still dangerous. But you have this Karg Island, which is the Iranian oil depot. It could be a target for these Marines that are going in. They could try to control it. They haven't taken out the infrastructure by the air. Then you have the nuclear material that's still on the ground, and they know where it is. These are big questions.
The latter is less likely, I think, than the former, Brett, because getting to the entombed nuclear fissile material would take, I think, a matter of weeks, if not months, and it will be radioactive when you get there. Karg Island, nothing is easy, but our military is extraordinary. You've been covering it for 25 years. What they have done in the last 16 days to shock and awe all of our adversaries around the world. I can't overstate how much safer the world is today than it was 16 days ago. And I think what President Trump has done, he's been very tough, very ruthless about this, and I want him to continue to be that, will be the most significant decision of his presidency. It will make the world much safer. It has weakened the alliance of tyrants with Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And the end game is, as Dasha said, unknown, but we are in a much, much better place. As Secretary of State Rice, former Secretary of Rice, said on a Hoover Institution podcast, we have been at war with these people for 47 years. President Trump pulled the trigger on a can that had been kicked down the road, to mix my metaphors, for a very long time. I'm glad he did. I'm glad he did. And he did kick the can. He refused to kick the can down. He pulled the trigger instead. Good for him. And they are a paper tiger. Now, that doesn't mean they can't kill more Americans. There are 13 families, Gold Star families, suffering the worst loss. Some of them are heartbreaking stories. All of them are, but I've seen some of them. And we have at least 10 additional seriously wounded, 100 other people wounded. They're dead Israelis, dead Gulf allies. And moments ago, Times of Israel posted a story. Hezbollah launched dozens of rockets at northern Israel after the Israeli Defense Forces had warned the civilians ahead of time. But the good news is they got two more of the baddies last night. The Israelis got Ali Larijani, the new strongman of Iran. He had a run of about 2 weeks. And then they also killed the Basij chief, as well as 300 other Basij thug killers. Remember, they killed 35,000 people 2 months ago. January to 9, 24 hours. They killed 35,000 people, Iranians. They've been killing Americans since 1983, at least in Beirut. They've been holding us hostage since 1979. It's an evil regime run by fanatics. And yes, I'm glad we're doing it. And I hope we're bringing freedom to Cuba as well. That came up on Special Report last night as well, cut number 2.
In the meantime, Cuba is imploding. They've had protesters going to the streets. The blackouts are happening. The president was asked about that today. Take a listen.
I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it.
Do anything he wants with it. They did confirm, the Cubans confirmed, they are having negotiations and talks, and Secretary Rubio is leading some of those.
I hope he takes it to freedom. And if he does, the first 15 months of his second term, with Venezuela on the path to transition to freedom, Cuba on the transition to freedom, this fanatical theocracy, humbled if not thrown out in Iran, will be the most significant 15 months an American president has since 1989 in the fall of the Berlin Wall.
There's no doubt in your mind.
No doubt in my mind. No, not even close. It isn't even close. There isn't anything to compare this to. Look, we had a tremendous immediate win in Afghanistan and then proceeded to lose slowly for 19 years. We had a just remarkable march to Baghdad because the American military can do anything, but you can't change a culture. And we've learned that. So the American military, the message they are sending to the world, and it's a great message to send again and again and again, is without peer. There is no peer. All right? All the hardware that the Iranians had, everything they had, built by Russia and China. It doesn't work. Doesn't work as well as our stuff. Now, the Israelis, they're pretty good. I don't want to go to war with them. Our Gulf allies have got pretty good air defenses from us. They're, by the way, MBS, King of Saudi Arabia, he's in the cheerleading section now. I haven't heard from MBZ, President of the King of the United Arab Emirates, ruler of the United Arab Emirates. He hasn't been heard from, but I think he's going go, go, go. UAE is Little Sparta, one of our most reliable allies in the world. Our new allies are all in the Middle East. I don't know where NATO is. When Lindsey Graham posted today, NATO, you are making a big mistake, that ought to have shocked them. They ought to have been shocked to their core, because that's not how Lindsey Graham talks about our allies. But hawks notice when nobody flies along with us when we take the lead on a problem for the world such as Iran. I hope NATO rethinks what it's doing. Welcome back, America, the Irish Rover. I used to go to hear Uncle Sid and the Doherty sisters at Jonathan Edwards during college, and they always played on St. Paddy's Day. It was fabulous. Happy St. Patrick's Day to Brody, who is 1 day old, and to the entire family, Alexandra and Brian and Glenn and Susan, and Brian's parents, whose names I don't remember. But what a great way to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with a new addition to the family. Brody, welcome. Good to have you. Turn him into a Browns fan. Brody the Browns fan. In fact, if they haven't come up with a middle name yet, Brody Browns is a great middle name. Just saying. All right, John Thune spoke today about what he's now set underway, the talking filibuster. Here is the majority leader this morning, cut number 23.
On the Save America Act, a package of common sense measures united around two themes: protecting our elections and protecting our youth. You're going to hear me use the adjective common sense a lot in this debate, Mr. President, because if there's any word that is suitable to describe the measures we're considering, it's that. Mr. President, if there's anything essential to the integrity of elections, it's ensuring that those who are registered to vote are eligible to vote, and that those who show up to vote at polling places are those who they say they are. And how do you do that? Well, by requiring that Americans show proof of citizenship when they register to vote, and that they show photo ID at polling places. That's what the Save America Act would do.
Now, the talking filibuster is different from the silent filibuster, which is where you need 60 votes to vote for cloture. And the rules are arcane and very difficult because it's an open amendment process. Leader Thune's been thinking about this, and he filed a bunch of amendments, which are privileged amendments on the amendment tree, so they'll come up first. Meanwhile, let's go to the Senate floor. Marsha Blackburn kicked it off when I checked in earlier this hour, and give a listen.
New York, which are home to more than 3.5 million illegal aliens combined, and that's what you're seeing. Making it easier to cheat, making it easier for non-citizens to vote. You know, I think that you look at these issues and you realize that our friends across the aisle, Mr. President, they might have been picking the wrong fight. People want DHS funded. They want the Save America Act passed. They want the integrity of our elections to be protected. And I think it is imperative that we come together on this floor and that we pass the Save America Act and make certain that we know who is voting and that they are a citizen. I yield the floor.
Oh, there's something happening. Now let's see if they go to a Democrat. Or I don't know how the talking filibuster works, except we have what John Thune said about why it's not going to spiral out of control from earlier today, cut number 20, whatever it is.
I move to concur in the House amendment to S1383.
The clerk will report.
Mr. President.
The Senator from South Dakota,
Texas.
Mr. Thune, moves to concur in the House
Mr. President,
amendment to S.
later this year, American citizens.
I ask that the reading be dispensed with.
Without objection.
And I move to concur in the House amendment with.
The clerk will report.
The Senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune, moves to concur in the House amendment with an amendment numbered 4420. In
Without objection.
And I ask for the yeas and nays on the motion.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The yeas and nays are ordered.
Mr. President, I have an amendment at the desk to the motion to concur with amendment.
The clerk will report.
the senator from South
How
Dakota.
exciting it gets in the Senate, friends. This is high drama. Jim Banks, the senator from Indiana, is in the chair. What John Thune is doing is filing a bunch of amendments that will come up first that, if adopted, he hopes will bind the Senate. I don't think that will work. I think the parliamentarian will rule that they can't bind the Senate. But we'll see. I don't know. It's the Senate. They have Mike Lee. Senator Lee, who's the big proponent of this, has promised that there's not going to be any nuclear option involved. No breaking of the Senate legislative rules. That would be a disaster for democracy. So many bad things have been stopped by the filibuster over the years, by the 60-vote majority requirement to move forward with legislation, that we really don't want to get rid of it. It is possible for the government to operate. We have operated all these years with 60 votes, and before that, 67. Here's, what do we have, Adam? Okay, here's Ted Cruz on the floor.
Together, the votes of the American people shape the course of our nation and the course of history. But it is worth remembering that our voting system did not begin as it exists today. When this nation was founded, the right to vote was limited, and over time, through debate, sacrifice, a bloody civil war, and constitutional amendment, the right to vote was quite properly expanded. The 15th Amendment prohibited denying the vote based on race. The 19th Amendment guaranteed women the right to vote. And the 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18. At every stage of our constitutional amendment process, the goal was the same: to ensure that the right to vote belonged to American citizens and that it was exercised with integrity. And while our system has evolved, one principle has remained constant. Elections reflect the will of the American people. For a right so sacred, for a privilege so hard fought, it is shocking, it is tragic, how neglected and vulnerable the protection of our elections has become. That is why I'm here today on this very floor, urging the members of this body to pass the Save America Act. It says that when you register to vote in a federal election, you must provide proof that you are a citizen of the United States, and you must provide photo ID to vote. In simple terms, that's it. This is not some radical, politicized, or weaponized piece of legislation designed to restrict Americans from voting. It is a common sense measure that protects the integrity of our elections by ensuring that American citizens and only American citizens are voting in them. Legitimacy in a democracy rests on two pillars. First, the mechanical integrity of the system to produce a valid result, and second, the public's confidence in that system.
Ted Cruz is really good on his feet, isn't he? I'll come back. We'll check in on the talking filibuster now underway on the floor of the Senate over the Save America Act. Welcome back, America. Don't turn this off. I'm Hugh Hewitt. This is the Irish Rover. It's a great song. I can't play it all. Right now, I've posted on my X account a live view of Iranian security forces moving to disperse a Persian holiday gathering. I'll try and pronounce it. It's called Chahar Shanbi Sui Fire Ceremony. And the people are running away because there are a bunch of cops, a bunch of thugs, a bunch of besieged coming, kind of hoping an Israeli drone comes in and takes them out. But we'll see. Besieged have been down on their luck the last few days. Let's go rejoin the talking filibuster on the Senate floor right now, if Senator Cruz is still speaking.
You need a photo ID to apply for government benefits. You need a photo ID to enroll in college. You need a photo ID to open a bank account. You need a photo ID to check into a hotel. And I got to admit, this is my personal favorite. You need a photo ID, actually 2 photo IDs, to shovel snow in New York City. These are routine, everyday activities. The gallery is full. I feel confident everyone in the gallery who is not a child has a driver's license. And by the way, you wouldn't be admitted to the gallery if you didn't. And I feel confident every member of this chamber has done just about anything I listed well, except shoveling snow. I'm not convinced many of my colleagues have shoveled snow. Oh, they do shovel other things. The question is not whether Americans are bright enough to obtain photo ID. We know they can, and we know they do. The real question is, why would we not require the same level of verification for something as consequential and vital as voting? Are our Democrat colleagues saying voting doesn't matter? Or is it something else? Voting is not just another everyday activity. It rolls around every year, a few years, and it is the vehicle that protects the principles of our republic and safeguarding what matters. This legislation is necessary because there are individuals and systems that can undermine confidence in our elections if proper safeguards are not in place. And one of the most apparent ways that we've seen is through the masses of illegal immigrants that our Democrat colleagues let in through open borders over 4 years. During the Biden administration, more than 12 million illegal immigrants flooded into this country, the vast majority through my home state of Texas. Now, Mr. President, understand that was not an accident. That was not something the Democrats could not stop. That was their desired outcome. How do we know that? Because the instant President Trump was sworn into office for his second term, illegal border crossings plummeted 99%. Overnight. The Democrats said, no, Joe Biden can't secure the border. He needs new legislation. We now know that was a lie. It was objectively false, and they knew it was false. Well, if they could have secured the border for 4 years, and they chose not to, they chose to let murderers into this country. They chose to let rapists into this country. They chose to let child molesters into this country. They chose to let gangbangers into this country. They chose to let terrorists into this country. We've had 4 radical Islamic terror attacks in the last 2 weeks. Why, Mr. President?
DHS is closed. Senator Cruz can go a long time. And I think the ratings for this, it's on C-SPAN. I'm not going to spend the rest of the Hugh Hewitt show doing this, but I do want to remind you about Food for the Poor. The banner for Food for the Poor, Give Living Water, is at the top of HughHewitt.com. Every Lent, for as long as I've been doing this program, I've asked you to please contribute to Food for the Poor. They've been around for decades before that, been doing this for 25 years. Great sponsor of this show. I am a contributor to Food for the Poor. I hope you will be as well. $50 provides clean water for 2 children for an entire year. Food for the Poor is a not-for-profit. It's a Christian organization. Your contributions are tax deductible. The banner at the top of HughHewitt.com can handle $5, $50, $500, $5,000, whatever you want to give. It can be given there, or you can call 855-359-4673. That's 855-359-4673. Byron York joins me. Byron's probably English with a last name York. So we'll overlook that, Byron. Welcome. Senior writer for the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor extraordinaire. Byron, I have a column in the Examiner tomorrow morning arguing that the anti-military bias, which has existed in the Washington, D.C. press corps for decades is really coming out big time in the first 17 days of the conflict with Iran. Do you see it, or am I imagining it?
You know, I have interpreted all of this, and I'm sure we would agree on all of this press coverage, but I've interpreted it all as anti-Trump, that there is an anti-Trump reflex that is so powerful. It is just going off and going off and going off, so that Jake Tapper can say, all the reporters want the United States to succeed. And I believe that. But I think if you sort of put them under truth serum and do they want Donald Trump to succeed, I think it would be a very, very different answer.
Yeah. 20 years ago, Terry Moran, he was with ABC then, he's gone now, but he was with ABC then, was my guest. And we're talking about this. This is a quote. "There is, Hugh, I agree with you, a deep anti-military bias in the media, one that begins from the premise that the military must be lying and that the American projection of power around the world must be wrong." That's more than a decade before Donald Trump came down the escalator. I think it's deeply embedded in the media.
Well, it is. And look, the military deserves scrutiny just like any other part of government. The amounts of money, the taxpayer money that's given to them is just unbelievable. So they deserve all the, lots and lots of scrutiny, especially over spending. But right now, they're in action. They're in harm's way. And much as they did in Venezuela, they're performing with incredible skill and preparation. And so it does seem that a number of people in the press, and it's pretty far spread across the press, has kind of a rooting interest in pointing out the likelihood of failure of this act or that act. But
we actually had people saying, "Oh, dear goodness, we killed Larijani, and he was the moderate. He's the head of the secret police."
Well, look, you could certainly have a political argument about what's the right thing to do in this case. I wish we had had a broader political argument before the invasion of Iraq. I wish there had been more conservatives, more Republicans who were skeptical, as people like George Will were, of invading Iraq. So that's okay. That just doesn't bother me much at this point.
Now, let me switch subjects on you, because the talking filibuster is underway. We've carried Marsha Blackburn. We've carried Ted Cruz. I'm not going to carry more of it because it's going to be there tomorrow and the next day and the next day. How does this end, Byron?
Well, I don't know, but if it ends in voter ID, I think we all owe the people who came up with this tactic and carried it out thanks. I mean, because you have a situation in which you've discussed it many times. Pew says 83% of those polled favor photo voter ID to vote. That includes 70% of Democrats. It includes people of all races. It's just all across the line. Americans support voter ID. You have one party that, for whatever its reasons, wants to just throw its body across, across the rails to stop this. And if Republicans can come up with a way to make it pass, I think we should thank the people who did it.
Well, now, I am in agreement with that up to a point, which is Mike Lee has said online, and I believe Senator Lee, that the nuclear option will not be used at any step in this process. Nuclear option is a disaster for the Senate. Do you agree with me about that? That the nuclear option... okay, so do you understand it, as I understand it, that the talking filibuster has nothing to do... They will never resort to the nuclear option to get this thing... Because what's going to eventually happen, they're going to get tired.
Well, yeah, look, that's what they say. So, but I agree with you about the nuclear option, and I think terrible things have been done, basically killing off other parts of the filibuster, have been done with the nuclear option. So I don't want to see it again.
Okay, so this thing will go on, and at the end of it, when there isn't a quorum, because that's what will happen, is the Democrats will call for a quorum, and the Republicans will be asleep, and they won't be able to get there, whatever happens, because you can't leave. Does anyone get blamed? Does John Thune have, this is sort of theater that the leader has to do because his party wants to do it, and so he's doing it. How long do they have to do it for the base to be satisfied?
I think they have to do it for a long time. They have to do it as if they believe it.
What is that, though? I mean, we're running a war here, Byron. This is, and the DHS, we can't vote on the DHS appropriation.
I mean, well, listen, that's another thing. I've just been writing this afternoon about this absolutely insane partial government shutdown, which is just an outrage, just a complete outrage, given what's going on in the world right now.
So if the Democrats came over and said, we'll vote to reopen DHS if you stop the talking filibuster, would you take that deal?
Boy, that's an interesting idea. It's a very short-term concession that they're probably going to have to make anyway. And you give up the chance for actual voter ID, which would be a major reform across the country. I don't know. And then finally, where do you think the Marines are going? I opened up on Fox News today with them at John Robert. They could be going to Yemen. They might just be floating off the coast. Marines can do a lot of things. People should read Call Sign Chaos, Jim Mattis's memoir, General Mattis. They can do a lot of different things. What do you think they're going to do? I have no idea. I mean, this has been, first of all, the U.S. military and forces have kept the element of surprise for me. I've been surprised a number of times. So when Hugh Hewitt asked me, Byron York, what are the Marines going to do? My correct answer is, I don't know.
That is, would that more people had the willingness to step forward and say, I'm a civilian, I'm not in the chain of command, and I'm not adjacent to the chain of command like the Gang of Eight or Marco Rubio or the Vice President. I have no idea. That would be the best thing for analysts to do, and not a surprise that Byron York said so. Byron York, thank you. A lot coming up next hour. I got a big opening monologue. I was on with John Roberts today over on Fox America Reports. Then I'm going to be joined by Randy. Randy Barnett is the best con law professor in America, not named Hugh. And he's got a brand new book out called Felony Review. You don't want to miss that. Lilacs is along next hour as well. Do want to remind you about our friends at besthotgrill.com. Besthotgrill.com. And they are our friends. We know Rhett. We know Irene. We love the product. It's upstairs. It's outside. It's going to be wherever you want it to be. They will deliver it. And you can try it for $47 for 2 weekends and the weekend between. All right, that's the rent it to try it. And if you buy it, you'll get a coupon for $47. So try it and you'll buy it. And you can believe me because I got one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast, and they make the best steaks in the world. A lot of people like to grill a lot of different things. I know that. People would actually put vegetables on grills. I think that's actually malpractice in the world of grilling. But some people even like fish on grills, and that's also malpractice. I like beef on grills, and I love it on the Solaire infrared grill. 3 minutes, 1,000 degrees. Is it 1 minute to 3,000 degrees? I don't know. It gets so blinking hot that the meat is done so fast that you won't know it until you try it. How it seals in the flavor, seals in the juices. Dwayne has one. I've got two. It's a fabulous thing. You ought to give it a try. Remember, try it before you buy it. $47, 2 weekends and the week in between. Then you get a $47 coupon if you buy any size. BestHotGrill.com. Also want to remind you about our friends at Food for the Poor. Here's Ed Rainey talking about our friends down south.
We work in 20 countries in the Caribbean and Latin America, and people who have no other resources except the incredible generosity of typically Americans who, time and time again, really just give from the bottom of their heart and through their love for thy neighbor. And so this is a faith-based organization, and through our church networks in all these countries, we're able to get the aid to where it needs to be.
Hundreds of you have already stepped up in this Lenten season with a $50 contribution, which gets clean water to 2 children for a year. But 50, 100, 500, we've had a few of those. Waiting for that $1,000 contribution. Use the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. It says Give Living Water. Or call them at 855-359-4673. And then don't forget I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I took it in hour number 1. I remind you in hour 2 and hour number 3. Don't leave home without it, especially if you're about to go out and commute home. And the traffic is a mess inside the Beltway, probably up the East Coast because we had a wind event here last night. And a lot of down trees that they're working to get out of the way. So if you have a bad back in a car, you wish you'll have a Relief Factor. I tell some people, commuters, leave it in the car, take it in the morning or put it next to your coffee, put it in your bathroom with the toothbrush. Just take it every day. Get Icarian Curcumin and Resveratrol Omega up in your body. You'll feel better every single day. Starter pack is $19.95. Call 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. Go to their website and find the starter pack at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Hope you're watching on the Salem News Channel. We're now on Pluto TV, on Samsung, channel 1177, also on Amazon Prime. Hope you go and watch it. Larry Elder will be along right after me on the Salem News Channel. I got a lot to cover this hour. I'll be dealing with Randy Barnett. Got a brand new book out called Felony Review. He is, I think, the smartest con law professor in America, and I love when I can talk to Randy. And this is a book, a memoir of sorts of the Cook County prosecutor. It's really fabulous. Lilacs coming up after the break. First thing I want to do for you, though, is bring you up to speed on, well, before I do what I did on America Reports earlier today, let me remind you about AndrewandTodd.com. AndrewandTodd.com, great program sponsors. They have been for more than a decade. 888-1172. 888-1172. They've helped thousands of my listeners. New listeners, old listeners, young listeners, senior citizens, veterans who don't want to put any money down. What they do is they lend you money to buy a house, or they refinance the loan that you have. They always get you the best rate possible. They help you repair your credit, and they know all the programs. If you're a vet, like I said, you don't have to put any money down. You can also do the IRRL, whatever that is. It's the very, very fast refi if you're a vet. There's also a very, very fast refi if you're a first-time home buyer with FHA, and they do those. If you're a senior citizen, they help you do the reverse mortgage to get money out of your house without ever making another payment on your house, and that's a great thing to have for a little financial flexibility. But they're bread and butter. Buying your home. You're buying a house. You need a loan. You need to do the appraisal. You need to do your credit report. You got to do all the different stuff. You got to account for your income. You want someone to help you, not give you unnecessary work. That's AndrewandTodd.com. They're with Union Home Mortgage. They're the lender. They underwrite the loan. They don't lead you on when they're not going to do the loan because they don't want to waste your time, don't want to do your time. But they like to do the loans, and they help you get the loan done. And they are competitive with anyone because they're the bank. So give them a call, 888-1172. 888-1172. Now, I was on with Sandra Smith, John Roberts on America Reports right before my show today at about 1 o'clock in the East. Here's what John and I had to talk about with Iran on the table.
Sandra, let's bring in Hugh Hewitt, Fox News contributor and host of the Hugh Hewitt Show. So big developments overnight with Soleimani, the head of the Basij, and Larijani, who is essentially running the country, now gone off the table. You wrote this in a Fox News opinion piece. You said, President Trump would really like to leave a legacy of peace, but he is the sort of tough and indeed ruthless commander-in-chief the U.S. needs to put away its enemies, not merely put them in timeout. Here's hoping he sees this battle through until Iran cannot menace us, Israel, the Gulf nations, or anyone for a generation or three. It seems that there's a lot of people out there, Hugh, who would like to see President Trump come to the negotiating table and leave a kind of status quo in place in Iran. And I get the sense he is not prepared to do that.
I hope he isn't, John, and you're right. There are a lot of people out there who are voicing defeatist or at least demoralizing sentiments. The president is not listening to them. I am very happy that he's not listening to them. I agree with them. We are all frosted with NATO. When you've lost Lindsey Graham, NATO, you've done a bad thing because the old Reagan conservatives, the hawk talk that comes out of Lindsey Graham and Tom Cotton and the hawks in the Senate, when you've lost their support, you've done a very bad thing because you've lost the sort of center of NATO allyship in the United States. But back to the president. I want him to see it through because we're in a period of transition in Iran right now, and you'll remember, John, we went from Brezhnev to Andropov to Chernenko to Gorbachev in the Soviet Union in 3 years, and Reagan kept saying, who do I deal with? There's nobody to negotiate with. So who exactly should President Trump negotiate with? We're going to keep killing the bad guys as long as the bad guys keep killing their own people or trying to kill us with their missiles. When the Iranians lay down their arms and they say, okay, we're done, we are not going to aspire to a nuclear weapon, we're not going to try and amass a force of missiles with which to intimidate the region, then you can talk to the Iranians, and then we can have peace. But until then, I hope he keeps pounding until somebody says uncle collectively or individually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little surprised at the EU foreign minister with what she said, that we can't quite figure out what's going on here. I think it's pretty clear. You'd have to have your eyes closed to not figure out what's going on here. The president insists that if he didn't take action, Iran would be a much bigger threat, and not just to the region, but to much of the world as well. This is what he said.
If I didn't do that, if I didn't decimate, I call it their nuclear dust, they would have had a nuclear weapon within 1 month after that bombing took place, and they would have used it on first Israel and then the Middle East. So if you believe that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon, they should not have it, then you have to absolutely love what I've done.
I mean, Iran threatening the Middle East with a nuclear weapon is one thing, but they were developing their ballistic missiles at a stunning pace, such that they could reach the middle of Europe. And if you had a nuclear-armed Iran with missiles capable of flying thousands of miles, I can't imagine the threat that they would have posed.
The world is so much safer today, John, than it was 17 days ago. And for the reason you just articulated. We have seen what Senator Cotton has called the Yosemite Sam response that Iran has had to this attack. Well, imagine if they had nuclear weapons. They would be doing the same thing, or they might have done the same thing on a first strike. They're a group of theocratic fanatics. It's not a normal enemy like the Soviet Union or China or even North Korea. Agnostic, atheists, whatever. They're end times theologically driven fanatics. Therefore, they're the most dangerous country in the world, most maligned country in the world, leading exporter of terrorism in the world. President had their number, and when they got too close, he did what every president since W said they would do, which is stop them from getting a nuclear weapon. This is hardly like a bolt out of the blue. It's been American policy for over 20 years. So I'm very relieved, and I just want to make sure that we see it through and we don't listen to the naysayers and the weak-kneed and withdraw too soon from this aerial combat. As for the Marines, I don't know if they're going to Karg Island. They might be going off Yemen just to make sure the Houthis don't do it. They just might be there to intimidate, and they're very good at that. I just want the Marines to get there. We'll see what happens next. And NATO, maybe you should change your mind.
Yeah, I saw a pretty interesting analysis that the Marines could maybe take up positions on friendly territory with which to defend the Strait of Hormuz against any attacks from Iran against shipping. So we'll see what they do there. Hugh, always great to catch up with you. Thanks so much, my friend. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I am. Thank you. I love doing. John is a serious reporter. Sanders is a serious reporter. Brett's a serious reporter. You know, I mostly work in the daytimes with Fox, and I do my show from 3 to 6 in the afternoon on the Salem News Channel, Salem Radio Network, all of our wonderful affiliates out there. But I like working with people who've been around a while, so that when I say Brezhnev, Andropov, Chernenko, and Gorbachev, they're not. They don't think it's like the infield for the Pirates. Although the infield for the Pirates would be better with those 4 guys playing for them. Nevertheless, sorry, Carl, had to put that in there. Let me remind everyone, if you're Carl's age, that means you're over 50, and you ought to be getting your phone service from consumercellular.com. You ought to make the switch, and you ought to do so by calling 1-800-441, I got it wrong, 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. My code is Hugh. If you use my name, Hugh, when you're talking to customer service, you'll get your second month free, no matter what kind of service you order. You can also go to consumercellular.com/Hugh, but they'll still ask you for the code, and the code is still Hugh. If you're like Carl and you're over 50, you get a very special deal with Consumer Cellular. 2 lines of unlimited data on which you can watch your beloved Pirates stream. You're the one who does it, I assume. That probably doesn't cost much, but you want it to cost even less if you've got unlimited data and you want to stream something and you're over 50. The reason Consumer Cellular does that, they know most people who are over the 50 don't really use all that much data. They might have some big spikes, so they might want an unlimited data plan for insurance purposes against a big unknown bill. That is the 2 lines, $60 a month. When you use my name, Hugh, and you call 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454, my code for the second month free is Hugh. Now back to Cuba, which is on full. I was on special report last night. I played this in hour number 1. I want to play it again. Cut number 2 of what I had to say to Brett last night about Cuba.
In the meantime, Cuba is imploding. They've had protesters going to the streets. The blackouts are happening. The president was asked about that today. Take a listen.
I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it.
Do anything he wants with it. They did confirm, the Cubans confirmed, they are having negotiations and talks, and Secretary Rubio is leading some of those.
I hope he takes it to freedom. And if he does, the first 15 months of his second term, with Venezuela on the path, the transition to freedom, Cuba on the transition to freedom, this fanatical theocracy, humbled if not thrown out in Iran, will be the most significant 15 months an American president has since 1989 and the fall of the Berlin Wall.
There's no doubt in your mind.
No doubt in my mind. No. There just isn't any doubt in my mind. You can't find three events like that in 15 months since 1989. That music means Lilacs is in the house, as in James Lilacs, as in the proprietor of jameslilacs.substack.com in the Bleat. James, a good Tuesday to you. We've got to cover 5 things in 8 minutes. The war, Cuba, the world after the war, during the war, the pace of events, and the press. So I'm going to press you to the wall. First of all, your assessment of the war as it stands 17 days in.
I'm appalled we haven't won. I think it's time to just absolutely tuck our tail and realize that we are unequal to the task and go home. As far as I can tell, Iran is well stocked. You might say overstocked with opportunities, with people that shouldn't be in government, with places that are full of nasty things. And we seem to know where they are and seem to be able to find them with surprising regularity. I was reading today about an Israeli strike where there were 2 guys that they wanted to get. They waited until they were in the bunker. Then they bombed the entrance and bombed the secret exit and then bunker busted the place itself. We keep doing this and they keep saying we will fight, fight, fight. But every once in a while, you'll get something through from somebody in Tehran who says that, it's you're just waiting. That the guys who used to stand on the street corner and pull us out of our cars and beat us are now afraid because they figured that there's a drone with their name circling overhead. And after 17 days, I think the assessment is that the damage has been tremendous. The Iranians have been set back, Lord knows how long. And I think it's going good from here. But then again, what do I
agree.
know? I just continue.
As much as anyone else who's commenting on it. Number 2, Cuba. What do you will you vacation in Cuba the day it's free? I will.
No, I think I'll wait a little bit before the building code inspectors get in there and shore up some of those B&Bs because we're talking an urban infrastructure that, while poetic and romantic and ruined in many ways, still does go back a long way. And let's just say Cuba has invested a great deal in maintenance. No, I would love to go back to see it restored to what it was before, in the Batista days. And if they're smart, they'll keep the old cars. They'll fix them up. They'll polish them. They'll drop a new tranny in them there, and we will have sort of this Ricky Ricardo, Lucille Ball era of 1950s Cuba where people can go back and gamble and have great times on the beaches. I would absolutely
You just gave me a great idea. They ought to have a car show there and invite all of the American they're crazy. Car collectors are crazy to begin with. But they invite John Campbell and all of his buddies to go down there and just bid on every old clunker that's driving around because they haven't had a new car there in decades, I think.
Mm-hmm. It'll be fascinating, and I can't wait. I was reading today that they're actually starting to burn Communist Party headquarters because they've been out of power forever, and water forever, and internet forever. So that finally when you have the government saying, yeah, we're going to talk to the Yanks, we're going to see what we can do there. This is unprecedented, and it's only a matter of weeks, I think, before something happens. And Trump is saying that he can have it if he wants it, frankly, and he may indeed be right. What amuses me is that I'm finding. Yeah, what amuses me, Ben Rhodes the other day, I think on Twitter, Ben Rhodes, the old Obama guy, was saying that first Venezuela and now Iran and then Cuba, changes of government 3 times in 3 months. We are seeing, I think he put it, levels of authoritarianism that we hadn't visited before. That it is authoritarian, mind you, to dismantle, disable, destroy, get rid of oppressive governments that have been putting their people under the boot for some cases years and in other cases decades. That is the definition of authoritarianism. By that definition, FDR only wanted to get rid of 2 governments, Germany and Italy. So he wasn't as bad but he was still bad because he's.
You know what I like about the authoritarian thing, James? The thing that makes Trump the most angry in the last year and a half or 15 months since he's been there is that the Supreme Court overturned his tariffs. And he complied with the ruling, which isn't really how authoritarian. They normally just arrest the judges, right? He's not an authoritarian. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Ben Rhodes went to Fidel Castro's funeral, for goodness sake.
Right.
He really did.
An authoritarian would have sent the marshal of the Supreme Court, as one of our commentators called it, to arrest everybody, or tried to pack the court or something like that. But he complied. We didn't hear him say how many divisions of the Supreme Court have. He went along with it. So yeah, bad authoritarian, bad.
Okay, now I want to talk to you about the world and the pace of the world. In 15 months, we've had Venezuela, Iran, the war, and now the Cuban Revolution within a revolution. Can we keep up at this pace for another 2 years and 11 months?
Well, it's not up to us, is it? I mean, you have pivotal times when history seems to change and turn. I mean, there's the old line about Lenin: there's decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks when decades happen. And this seems to be one of those. I remember back in college when a friend of mine was just enthused by what was happening in Nicaragua and Cuba and Iran, because the people were finally overthrowing bad governments and of course, Nicaragua a disaster, Iran a disaster. But it was a mood of the time. There was sort of this, the people are rising up and things are changing, and periodically it sweeps through various parts of the world. Color revolutions here, the Berlin Wall falls there. But sometimes you feel as if there's a geist afoot. There's a zeitgeist afoot in the land, filling the sails in a way that we haven't seen before. And when you have governments that nobody ever thought were going to be changed, nobody thought Cuba was going to change, nobody thought Venezuela or Iran, when all of a sudden it seems that they're much more frangible than we thought, then who knows what it emboldens elsewhere. The spirit does not seem to be going against freedom and government that is good to its people. And the reason for that is muscular action by the United States to show how it can be done, which also illustrates the paucity, really, of effort that that our adversaries, the Chinese and the Russians, can muster. So between Ukraine hanging on for 4 years and the rest of this, go.
You think the Scandinavians can summon up the will to revolt against the EU? Get out? No. Okay.
No, I don't believe so. No, I think, frankly, that they're too concerned about being very, very nice and calm and having dry handshakes and nodding in nice white rooms to ever do anything about the troubles in their society.
The last question. The American media is not, if it's not defeatist, it's least intent on demoralizing the people. It's not working. It's not working at all because there are alternatives. But what's wrong with those people?
Well, again, if you hate Trump so much that you have to oppose anything that he does, and you cannot possibly regard anything that he does in a positive light, then you have to grudgingly say, well, I'm not on the side of the mullahs, but this is the wrong way to go about it. We were so close to a deal. We could have talked, jaw, better than war, etc. The contrarians who don't want, essentially, Trump to be able to claim. That's part of it. The other part of it is just this instinctive war bad, so we can't do anything. We shouldn't do anything. We mustn't do anything. And even then, they're sort of bothered by the fact that this isn't like an old style, Dresden cities burning. This is pretty targeted. And, you'd think that they'd have less, reservations about it. But the people who go into journalism are generally the sort who just believe that, muscular, robust kinetic action on behalf of national interest is something that you have to pull long faces about. You remember back in the days when we first started talking that there was a song that we played, Arms for the Love of America. Great, big patriotic song.
Arms for the love of America.
For the love of America. Because that's what the popular culture was then. I mean, part of it, of course, was, guys in government saying, let's all get behind this, right? But there was a spirit, especially after we were attacked, that America was good and America should prevail. And those things, America is good and America should prevail, are sentiments that some people are just very queasy about because they're sort of already living in the 24th century where the Federation has gotten rid of individual governments and we're all living on replicator food and saying, whatever.
Next week, Lilacs. Next week, we're bringing back Arms for the Love of America, if we can remember. Lilacs can be found at jameslilacs.substack.com. Visit the Bleat, but go to jameslilacs.substack.com. Felony Review, Tales of True Crime and Corruption in Chicago is a brand new book that is out. Felony Review is unfortunately in Studio West, and I'm in Studio East. But luckily, the author, Randy Barnett, the Carmack Professor of Constitutional Law at Georgetown University, was a very, very good interview and a very, very good guest. He's been my guest many times on this program, and he looks like the Dread Pirate, Randy, right now. Randy, you're okay? It's not permanent?
We'll hope not. chance. The odds are great that it's not permanent, but well, I'm going to enjoy the look while it lasts.
All right, I got to begin by saying when Felony Review arrived on the West Coast, I forgot to bring it. I said, how and when was Randy Barnett a prosecutor? And so I looked it up. You were at Cook County's prosecutor's office. And how and when did you write this book? Because you just wrote your autobiography, and before that you wrote like 10 case books and treatises on all sorts of... When did you write Felony Review, and when were you in the Cook County prosecutor's office?
Well, I was in the office from 77 to 81, and I wrote the book as a spinoff of my memoir. I had a section in the memoir about being a prosecutor, but my memoir got very long, as you know, Hugh, and I decided to take those chapters off because it was a bit of a diversion from my course of my career that led me to being a constitutional law professor and a constitutional litigator. And then what I was able to do is blow them up into a separate book. And I wrote that book over the last year and a half, in which I was actually able to do some more background on the cases I worked. I was able to do background on the people I worked with, and include more cases than I could have squeezed into the previous memoir. And it stood alone as a book that's probably the most entertaining read of any of the books that I've written, because it is a genuine story of true crime and corruption in Cook County, which was at its peak of corruption at the time I was there. And it involves a series of short vignettes so that you can read it a little piece at a time. But it goes quite quickly. And
you know, Randy,
I'm very excited about it.
Every year I use your casebook and Josh Blackman's casebook when I teach. Now, I'm taking the semester off this spring because of obligations to Fox and other folks. So I'm not teaching this semester, so I'll be using Barnett and Blackman. And every year in the first class, Con Law 1, I teach them, don't be a prosecutor. You don't want to be a prosecutor. Every prosecutor I know gets burned out and ends up either being a judge or retiring after 20. Don't be a prosecutor. You want a better kind of client. Don't be a prosecutor. The hours are long. The pay is horrible. People yell at you. Juries are crazy. Don't be a prosecutor. Now I have to tell them that the man whose book I relied on for the last 20 years was a prosecutor. So why did you make that choice? And how am I going to get out of this pickle?
Well, your advice is right and it's wrong. I'll in a minute, I'll tell you why it's right and why it's wrong. But anyway, I became a prosecutor because that's how I became a lawyer. A television show came on TV called The Defenders in the 60s, starring E.G. Marshall and as the father and Robert Reed as the son in a father-son criminal defense firm. Filmed on location in New York in black and white, very gritty, and it wasn't like Perry Mason, which was about solving murders. It was about the practice of law. And it captured my imagination at the age of 10. It's what made me want to be a lawyer. And even when I went to Northwestern and then Harvard Law School, and all my classmates were saying, well, aren't I worried about wasting my degree by being a county prosecutor? And my answer was, I went to law school to do what I wanted to do, not to do what I don't want to do. I don't want to work for a law firm. And let me just say this. It was better than TV. I was so worried that when I finally got into the practice of criminal law, I'd be disappointed because it wouldn't live up to TV. And it's really better than TV. Until The Wire came on HBO, they've just been unable to show you how gritty and interesting and dirty and down to earth the criminal justice system is. And that's what Felony Review tries to show.
So why am I right and why am I wrong in my advice to the con law students?
Okay, I'll tell you why you're wrong. You're wrong because, in fact, it's a fantastic job. And if there's something you dream about doing, do not give up on your dream. It was, I had the time of my life, and and I wrote a book because it's the most memorable time in my life. You're right insofar as you need an exit strategy when you go in. You need to go in with an idea of what you want to do when you go out. Now, you could be a career prosecutor. That's possible. People do it. And if that's what you end up doing, that's great. But most people who go in, they come out and they have to do something else. Now, I had no problem because I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a law professor. The problem I had was getting the job, but I knew what I wanted to be. My son, who followed in my footsteps and became a prosecutor in Kings County, which is Brooklyn, New York, he had a problem because he did not want to be a judge and he did not want to be a personal injury attorney. He did not want to do that stuff. And so he did have a transition problem. Ultimately, he has done great things, but it's something you need to know going in.
I'm coming right back with Randy Barnett, author of the brand new book, Felony Review. I have lots to talk with him about, but remember the book, Felony Review, if you were even thinking about being a prosecutor. Randy Barnett's one of the country's leading con law authorities. His case book is the one I recommend everyone use, Constitutional Law Cases in Context. He writes it with Josh Blackman. He has a brand new book out, Felony Review, Tales of True Crime and Corruption in Chicago. Randy, Jack Goldsmith wrote a book. He's written lots of books. But his best book, in my opinion, was his memoir of growing up the stepson of the accused murderer of, who's buried in Giant Stadium, the labor leader.
Hoffa?
Come on. Yeah, Hoffa. And so Goldsmith is the stepson of the guy who was, for a long time considered the button man on Hoffa and proved that he wasn't. I have a feeling Felony Review is going to be the most riveting of your books because it's going to be about real people and murderers and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the book starts off with me in a police interview room at 3 a.m. taking a court-reported statement by one of 4 members of the Latin Kings who had slaughtered by stabbing to death 3 guys who came into Chicago to buy some marijuana, and how that happened. And I spent 10 or 12 hours with this one of them, getting his first confession and then getting a court reporter confession, and finally at the end of that confession asking him if he had it to do all over again, would he do it again? And his answer was, well, if it was a sure thing. And I said, but there's no such thing as a sure thing. And he said, well, a lot of Latin kings have killed people without getting caught. And I said, I know, but you got caught. Would you do it again? And he said, I'd have killed the first guy for sure. I'm not sure about the other 2. That's the kind of book this is. There's story after story.
Randy, have you taught Crim Pro? Have you taught Crim Pro?
I have not taught criminal procedure. Taught substantive criminal law, but not criminal procedure. Why?
Well, I loved Crim Pro from Jerry Israel. We're about the same age. Jerry Israel taught at Michigan. And I just loved it. But I've only been in one criminal trial in my life as a defendant lawyer. And I had to ask the prosecutor for help because it was the son of a friend of mine who was in trouble. And I didn't know where to stand. I didn't know what to do. How was your first day?
It sounds like the plot of My Cousin Vinny.
It very much was. But I threw myself on the mercy of the court and we got the kid into diversion. But how in the world did you end up with a capital case on your first day?
Oh, well, it was because I was in felony review. Let me tell everybody what felony review is, because it doesn't exist everywhere. And that is, there's a deal between the Chicago Police Department and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, 2 different governmental agencies, and that the Chicago Police Department cannot file felony charges against a suspect unless a prosecutor signs off on it, which means there had to be created a unit of full-time prosecutors called Felony Review, in which you have your offices in the police station, you have your own squad car, you work 12-hour shifts, day shift or night shift, and you respond to the police area headquarters or district where the case is being considered, and you interview the witnesses and you interview the cops, and you try to get confessions from the defendant if you can. And that was one of the cases I worked at, Area 6 on the north side, in which I took the confessions from 2 of the 4 gang members who committed this crime, and they both ended up on death row until Governor Ryan commuted their sentence to life imprisonment.
When Randy Barnett walks into the precinct, and he's 23 years old, freshly scrubbed,
24, 25, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, probably ill-fitting suit, bad tie. What do the cops think of you?
Sport coat and jeans. They can tell if you're on their side or not, and I was on their side. I mean, I was there to decide whether the evidence was there, but I was there to work with them, and they liked me, and I liked them, and they used me in many times. For example, there would be times in which all their guys had taken a run at defendants, at suspects in terms of getting confession. They needed somebody fresh to do the interrogation, and I would come in and I would do another interrogation. So it was great to work with them. Now, there were moments in which they were not happy with me, and I talk about those in Felony Review. And I actually had a case on the far south side where the homicide sex detectives stuck around to escort me out of the building after I was doing my paperwork. I didn't even know they were sticking around, but I think what they were trying to do was shield me from the tactical officers who had done the arrest when I denied the charges there. I let the guy go. And they were there to protect me, I think, from being intimidated by these TAC officers in the middle of the night. I didn't realize that was happening until they walked me to my car.
Okay, Randy, I got to get one con law question in, but first, how do you go from Harvard Law to Cook County prosecutor?
Well, you don't do it because you have a Harvard Law degree, I'll tell you that, because when I applied for a clerkship there, I got turned down. I got the clerkship, which got me the job, when the prosecutor who prosecuted the armed robbery of my grandfather and my brother in Harvey, Illinois, went to bat for me. And then all of a sudden, the state's attorney's office changed their mind and said, oh, we do have a place for you after all. And that's where I got my foot in the door. And then by doing a good job as a clerk, I had all kinds of people going to bat for me to get the job.
You know, as a law clerk long ago, Abner was on the D.C. circuit. I didn't clerk for him, but I was on the circuit at that time. And he told this story to all the clerks. He showed up to volunteer for a campaign, and in Cooks County, he said, who sent you? He said, nobody sent me. We don't want nobody that nobody sent. So I'm amazed that you ended up in Cooks County. Randy, my con law question. What President Trump is doing or ordering the military to do in Iran, I am perfectly happy with, and I believe it's within his authority as commander-in-chief. What do you think?
I tend to share that view. I mean, we have a very long history of presidents dating all the way back to Thomas Jefferson sending the Marines to fight the Barbary Pirates without a declaration of war. Declaration of wars have legal consequences, and that's one reason why you want to get one if you can. But I'm not sure they're absolutely necessary, especially when a country has declared war on us for the last 47 years. Death to America means something if it's coming from a country that has nuclear weapons on the top of ballistic missiles. That's what Iran does. And, you know, I think at some point shouting death to the other country and doing everything in your power to see that you get the capability of bringing death to that country and having the blood of countless servicemen and other civilians on your hands, that's enough to justify military action.
I am with you. Okay, I just wanted to double check with my authority. Back to felony review. When you put this book out, we have 1 minute. How did you expect it to sell? To prosecutors, to law students, to friends of Randy Barnett? How did you expect felony review to sell?
Well, I expect everybody in your audience to buy at least one copy. This morning, I was on Chicago Talk Radio, and the minute I hung up the phone, I heard from a circuit court judge in Chicago who was a prosecutor when I was there, just to compliment me on my appearance and looking forward to reading the book. I think if you're interested
you're on in Chicago again during Drive Time Home tonight. Right now, you're talking to Chicago again, so you might get more old friend call. Randy Barnett, Professor Randy Barnett, author of so many great books and now a felony review. Great to talk to you. Heal up, and I'll see you soon. I was on Special Report last night. I talked about that in hour number 1. Here is the first question I got asked by Brett about Iran last night. Cut number 1.
But Hugh, they have a dominance now over the air superiority. They have control over the Iranian military for the large part. The missiles and drones have reduced dramatically over recent days. They're still dangerous. But you have this Karg Island, which is the Iranian oil depot. It could be a target for these Marines that are going in. They could try to control it. They haven't taken out the infrastructure by the air. Then you have the nuclear material that's still on the ground, and they know where it is. These are big questions.
The latter is less likely, I think, than the former, Brett, because getting to the entombed nuclear fissile material would take, I think, a matter of weeks, if not months, and it will be radioactive when you get there. Karg Island, nothing is easy, but our military is extraordinary. You've been covering it for 25 years. What they have done in the last 16 days to shock and awe all of our adversaries around the world. I can't overstate how much safer the world is today than it was 16 days ago. And I think what President Trump has done, he's been very tough, very ruthless about this, and I want him to continue to be that, will be the most significant decision of his presidency. It will make the world much safer. It has weakened the alliance of tyrants with Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And the end game is, as Dasha said, unknown, but we are in a much, much better place. As Secretary of State Rice, former Secretary of Rice, said on a Hoover Institution podcast, we have been at war with these people for 47 years. President Trump pulled the trigger on a can that had been kicked down the road, to mix my metaphors, for a very long time. I'm glad he did. And so, Brett's such a pro. I meant to say the former rather than the latter. I said the latter rather than the former. He didn't call me on it. Good for Brett. By the way, I should note, the Marines might not be going anywhere except Yemen. Has anyone figured that out yet? They might just float around off the coast of Yemen in the event that the Houthis decide to mess with the Red Sea oil. We will see. We will see. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. Want to remind everyone of that before you get in your car and driving home, or maybe you're in your car and you're driving home and on the East Coast and you are You're dodging down tree limbs because we had quite the wind event after midnight last night. And if you are in the car and you're feeling bad and your back hurts and your knee hurts or your ankles hurt, try Relief Factor. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. I took it in the first hour. I take it every day. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Or go find the starter pack, $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. And please don't forget, over at hughhewitt.com, at the very top, you'll see the Give Living Water banner. That's the place you go to give online to Food for the Poor. It is Lent. What have you done? Not enough. It's the season of almsgiving. Don't just give to anybody. Don't just give to somebody. Give to Food for the Poor that feeds the lost and the least in the Caribbean and the highlands of Guatemala. They provide clean water and good food. 855-359-4673. Or go to hughhewitt.com and go up on top and click on the Give Living Water banner. Thank you again. All of you, but hundreds of you have been donating $50, $500, $100. Thank you.